Welcome to A Styled Life, the podcast for purpose-led female founders and senior leaders ready to use style as a powerful tool for confidence, impact and influence. I'm your host, Alex Standley, multi-award-winning personal stylist, speaker and sustainable fashion consultant with 2 decades of experience in the fast-paced world of fashion. Join me as we redefine success from the inside out. This podcast isn't just about clothes. It's about personal power, purposeful style, and creating a life that aligns with your values. So whether you're running a business, leading a movement, or stepping into your next chapter, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into the world of personal style, sustainability, female empowerment, and living with intention through real stories, expert insights, and plenty of inspiration. Welcome back to A Styled Life. I'm really excited today to have the wonderful Priscilla Pollara with us. She is a strategic communications consultant whose background is in journalism, and she works with C-suite leaders, founders, politicians, and brands on narrative, positioning, and presence. She helps people to figure out exactly what impression that they want to make and then helps them to ensure that everything about them delivers it. She also happens to be my amazing guest for Stage Ready Style on the 17th of June. And I think this conversation will give you a really good insight into why and how our work just brilliantly complements each other. So Priscilla, welcome to A Styled Life.
Thank you very much. Honoured to be here.
I feel like people who follow me might have seen your name around by now, but I would love for you to share with us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
That's very kind. I hope they have heard of me. I'm not sure. Well, I'm Priscilla, and I have always worked with words, languages, and then obviously ultimately communications. My background is in journalism. I still consider myself a journalist, although I'm not at the grindstone anymore on newsroom floors on a newspaper, although in my head I sort of still am, and I can hear the bell, I can hear the deadline, I can hear the conference bell. I now work in communications in another way. It started very much me realizing that there is a gap in the knowledge of people who want to be found and how to promote themselves to get to that place. And being the journalist, it is always my job, or instinctively a journalist's job, to find out the story pretty quickly. It could be any story. It could be about the latest sock. It could be a world war. It can span, but you're always looking for the story and the top line. And I realized some time ago that whatever you're trying to be, sell, or some impression you're trying to make, it's quite hard for people to understand where you go from A to get to B, how to get from A to B. And that's where I exist. I exist in that gap. I work in communications in all sorts of ways. If I need to help somebody write a speech so they can get to B, fine. If I need to improve that speech, if I have to change the wording, if I have to change the reputation that might have taken a knock, if I simply need to inject a bit of confidence into that person or institution or that momentum that isn't quite there in a business, I will do that, and so on. So it's really, it's words, languages, communication, impact, and really how to command attention in whatever you're doing.
And is this something that you've always been passionate about? Like, did you grow up wanting to be a journalist, or what was it that brought you to this work?
I have always wanted to be a journalist. I suppose I remember car journeys. I don't think I ever really got to the end of them, but I remember car journeys, not only reading for sure, but I used to write creative stories, the sort that you would start at the age of, 8, 9, 10. The creaky staircase looked back at me and I wondered what was at the top of it or whatever. Very just that sort of thing. And I used to write stories all the time, and I'd start them, maybe didn't finish them. And I was always keen to escape into another world, whether that's writing or reading. And I was very lucky to grow up learning 4 languages as though they were all my mother tongue. And my father, who taught me a couple of those, always said to me, languages are ladders into new worlds. And they are. I mean, now with AI, probably less. Check in and get yourself from A to B in a city without having to know so much. But ultimately, to understand a culture, to be able to speak, very fluently with somebody who is of a different culture and country, you do have to understand their language and how they're coming to something. And so, yes, I've always wanted to be somebody who worked with words and understanding. And then, of course, I read, and it became stories, writing creatively. And then, yeah, I've always been very interested in the news, and growing up in the years that we did, there was a hell of a lot of news on television, because you would watch it at 10 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, I'd say, because, nobody got information anywhere else. Do you remember teletext?
No.
I mean, there was that as well.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're constantly reading headlines, and then you'd listen to the headlines of the news. And so, there were a lot of wars and poverty during that time. So you did hear, and I used to always watch the difference, was always interested in the difference between the BBC and ITV, which is, I think, all we had at the time, perhaps. But, and what they would start on and how they would say it. And now with, in an age of fake news and biased media, of course, that is, I was really onto something there. But at the time, it was just interesting how people started a story and what they would do to get you interested, get you hooked in. So I guess, yes, I suppose it was always going to happen. But at the time, I had no idea. I also wanted to be a ballerina. So, it could have gone either way.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because sometimes I feel like we forget things that we once aspired to when we were younger. I think I've been thinking about it more recently because of having a 7-year-old, and she's saying, I want to be this or I want to be that when I'm older, and I just know that's probably going to change many, many times. And I was thinking the other day, because we were talking, I don't even know how we got onto the topic, but we were talking about sports, I think, and I said when I was growing up, my dad had 3 girls, so he didn't have a boy kind of as an outlet for football and cars and all of that kind of thing. So me and him bonded over all of those things. And I remember wanting to be a Formula One or sports journalist, because because of his influence, basically. I loved cars, and I loved watching Formula One with him and watching football, and I love tennis and all these different things. And it's something that I just completely forgotten about, because obviously my career took a very different turn. But it is interesting looking back at what's influenced you and where you've come to.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have spoken about this, but I always actually wanted to work in Formula One when I was a child, as well as be the ballerina at the same time. The reason is because, the languages that I do speak, apart from German, which I don't, and that would have been useful, were the languages spoken up and down the pit lane, and obviously still are, minus a few because they've travelled to new countries since then.
Yeah.
But, the teams are based in the countries and I always thought this would be perfect. I didn't want to be a pit girl. I hadn't really considered whether I'd be an engineer or a flag waver. I don't know. But I kept thinking this has got to be the right atmosphere for me. Plus it's sunny. So funnily enough, it's amazing how these little tales that you tell yourself in your head, where they go. There's a lot of Formula One watching in my household, not necessarily via me anymore. But it's funny to see the sport obviously changed many, many times, but it's still there. And you're still the same person, and you're still thinking, maybe I could still work in Formula One. So it's interesting, that Jenny. So you never know, Alex.
Yeah, you never know.
Journalism needs some help. That's all I can say.
Maybe I'll become a stylist for Formula One drivers or something like that.
Lewis Hamilton doesn't need your help, but everyone else.
No, God, he definitely doesn't. He's got all the deals in the world, hasn't he? So obviously, as we've discussed, you came from journalism, and I think that's really interesting because, as you've said, I think that shapes how you see people, and you're kind of almost looking for the gaps between what people say and what they're wanting to communicate. Would you say that that's just an inherent skill that you have, or it's something that you developed over your time, working at newspapers and having to really not drill down, but kind of see something that people perhaps weren't always willing to say?
Yeah, I recently went into a school to teach a class of, how old would they have been? 7 going on 8. Children, about how to be a reporter. And we made up a story on the day. I made up a story that some crown jewels had been stolen from the Tower of London, and I brought in some necklaces of mine, and then a mask from, a cheap fake Venetian mask,
as
the masked intruder. And I gave them a time and I gave them a place. And I asked them, we obviously talked about what you're meant to put in your first paragraph and how you report before I told them the facts. And then I told them just to have a go. I gave them some examples, of course. And it was interesting what bits they started on and with. So you have the what, the when, the why, and so on. And the why, in fact, comes later, but it's really the facts. And a lot of them started creating the story that I did, the back of the car, I don't know, the windows rattled as the intruder, and I was thinking, okay, so this is very interesting. So that is not wrong, but as a newspaper, you can't have that. Why? And so, yes, and they were fascinated by the fact that there's very little that you can actually write in a newspaper article if you're reporting news, because you simply cannot inject any emotion or any view in there unless it's an op-ed, and then it becomes a feature, and that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
And a 7-year-old wouldn't necessarily know that, but it's fascinating to explain the difference between that's fun and creative and that's you are the author, and this is simply doing a messaging job. And for me, I suppose, newsroom floor, if you're working in news, you have to be answering those questions and not be biased in that. That is your job. And then when you inject a little bit of yourself, you can have a little bit more fun and freedom in that. But interestingly, both of those are done quite badly a lot of the time. Why? Because you might not have enough facts and you want to put spin on it. But when you've got the ability to put spin on something, you either miss the mark because you don't take that opportunity to shine and put a bit enough of yourself in it, or you simply quote other people and you're not putting enough, again, of yourself, but leaning on others. So I don't know. I think instinctively I just love the idea of a story being told. We've all been to plays and read books that we haven't finished or we didn't like, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's a bad product. It just means that it didn't chime with you. So I'm always wondering, if you would like something to chime with an audience, what do you have to do? And if you feel you've done enough of that, do you understand your audience, therefore? Because it clearly isn't quite landing or making sense. And yeah, I loved working with those children because there was a bit of a jaw drop. So actually, the story is really very boring and we're all going to have the same article. And I said, yes, that's exactly right. This is a news. Yeah. I'll be back tomorrow for the fairy tale story. But yeah, so I think instinctively I like a story being well told. And then now what I do is I hear people say, well, I told my story, but no one was interested. And I think, okay, well, let's make your story a bit more fun. Perhaps you're giving it out to the wrong people. So it's journalism, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is something I've learned from having my own business as well, is that is people connect with stories and storytelling, and they connect with you essentially and what makes you you. And I think we can get so lost, especially as business owners, in what's your avatar, who's your ideal client, and it almost becomes this like abstract thing. And we forget that we're just humans connecting with other humans, and storytelling enables us to do that. And I think we can lose sight of ourselves and lose sight of perhaps even, why you started your business in the first place, or what your passion is and who you're actually wanting to help, because we get too caught up in the strategy or how somebody's kind of presenting something to us. So I think the more that we can connect into who we are, then we can connect with other people as well.
Yeah, completely agree.
And you said something when you filled in the form for the podcast that really kind of stood out to me, that was, for you, it's all about knowing the impression that you want to make before you walk into the room, not in the moment. Can you talk us through what that actually looks like for you and for your clients as well?
Yeah, I mean, we can all probably think of hugely cringeworthy moments, or a little bit less cringeworthy, but moments that could have gone better than they did, or caught us, surprised. Just we spontaneously were not aware. No, we were not aware that spontaneously we would meet somebody or be in a situation where we would have to do our best to promote a thought, an idea, a point of view. We've all been to dinner parties that become heated, perhaps. But we've all been in those moments, and I have certainly had my fair share of clients who have had moments of, I'm really good at what I do, I'm the best at this, I'm being called number one, I have a bestseller, I have a this, Except when I have that moment where I have to shine spontaneously or even scripted, it doesn't go well. And so my feeling is, right, well, your version of perfect, and that went really well, Priscilla, is probably never going to be said. You're never going to tell me that. You're never going to think, I absolutely aced that. Even, back to Formula One, I mean, people who are not teams that are not used to winning, perhaps a great losing streak or simply because they've never won, what happens is they take about a week to have the come down of the exciting victory. Now, once that victory starts coming, they race on a Sunday. By the Sunday evening, they're already panicking about the next week because that excitement slightly dies down. So we've always been in that moment of, okay, right, this is the thing. Once you get used to being good at it, you will calm down in it. But we've all been in those moments anyway that where we have wanted to make our mark and impress and been ready for it, and it hasn't quite worked out. We've also been in those moments where spontaneously we were meant to simply do our best and we did not. And that is what it looks like for me, for my clients. Can you get better at that? Oh my gosh, of course. This is like telling somebody who has never run in their life, I am not a runner, so I'm not promoting it, that actually you will be able to get up to a certain K by 3 weeks' time. No way, they say, no way. I'm, or anything, or I'll never be able to learn a language or learn a bit of a language, or I'll never be able to bake pastry. You can do all of these things. It is simply a muscle that you flex, a muscle that you lean up and train. It's not going to be a perfection doesn't exist. And I know that client will never call me and say, do you know what, Priscilla, thank you, because that went brilliantly. They never say that. They say, I'm so glad I had that session with you, because at least they know they've trained or used the muscle that they were training. But, the reason why I do this is because, it's a massive gap in people's preparation for life, running their business, that simply has to be filled. There's a pothole that if you keep driving over, your tire is going to explode. You've got to fill that pothole up. You'll have a bit of a bump. The pothole's never as smooth, but you've got to attempt it. And I do it because I've been disappointed in myself when I have not done it well. Boy, have I done it badly. And other people too. So I just love helping the thing which I know we all suffer from, even the very top and the very best and all the bestsellers. And, why not add another string to your bow? Heck, let's have some confidence. Let's do it.
Definitely. And I think, I don't know whether you've seen this in your work or perhaps have always been working with a certain level of person, but something that we were talking about on the podcast last week was just the pressure that there is now to be on, like to be presenting yourself, because of social media and because of all the different ways that people can connect with you and see you and experience you. And, obviously in my work, it's something that I talk about a lot, because it's like how people experience you is obviously very important if you are speaking, or if you are a personal brand, or whatever those touch points are. Your style is a really important part of how people experience you, but it's not about the other person necessarily. It's also about you and how you feel and how confident you feel in yourself, and whether you're actually expressing the true version of you, or whether you're actually just performing to the person that you think everybody else wants you to be. Do you see that a lot in your work as well, that people have this idea of the person that they're supposed to be, when they stand on stage, they need to perform and be a certain way, but actually, as we've said, people connect with the real you and not this kind of performed version?
I mean, it's a bit of both. If you are on a stage, before I was talking more about, turning up into a room thinking, I'll ace this is okay, and then actually feeling that people are a bit sort of short with you, they don't give you enough time, you don't quite get there quickly, or spontaneously you meet people who could be brilliant for you, or are simply your audience live there. You don't have to use social media, but you don't quite get across what it is that you want, or perhaps there are people who got there before you, and so on. Being on stage is a performance. You have to treat that as a performance. Why? Because you can be a relaxed performer, you can be calm, and you can be centered, and you can be enormously confident, and people will look at that person, whoever it is, whether it's, I don't know, Robbie Williams or someone giving a speech, and think, gosh, they just don't get nervous. I can't even imagine. Fine. So that means that performance, I'm sure deep inside that performer has had to sort of check themselves somewhere along the way. But that performance is a performance because you are in the audience and they are putting it on for you, because you don't normally stand on a stage with some kind of a mic and have lots of people either picking their nose, looking at their phone, or clapping. It's very unusual. And it's a bit sort of Colosseum-esque. Oh, hello, everyone.
Yeah.
You have to perform, because it's a bit like when I first realised that news reporters on television do not speak like you and I are speaking right now. They have to, and the intonation is simply to keep you listening, as I just did now. And it's exactly the same. So you do have to perform. But I absolutely know what you're saying. You know, where is that line between performance, authenticity? I absolutely understand. It's difficult. I would say that, the conversation's moved on slightly with social media, but performing to seek and to win visibility, follower numbers, certainly numbers, and that algorithm tick, it's a slippery slope, because what normally people find is, if they're a product business, is that the performances that they put on in between them talking about products. So when they talk about themselves as perhaps a founder, or the pitfalls or the depression or the highs, that is what people really tune into, because we're all nosy and we don't have time to see our best friend at 11 a.m. this morning. So we'll just have a look on Instagram. But the issue there for me is that when one realizes that is the thing that is pulling a lot of people in, you do more of it. And you do more of it. And you lose perhaps sight of what you were there to do originally. By the way, that's not their fault. It is the fault of the beast, which is an algorithm whose goalposts keep changing, and you want to score a goal because you need to make it all worthwhile. So unfortunately, that is the kind of performance I panic about a little bit, because I think your audience has changed. Your audience has become one listening to a certain kind of conversation, and you turning up to say it, to give it, to deliver it, but they have lost. Perhaps the consideration is, have you lost sight of what you were there to do in the first place? Don't go for the numbers, go for the sales, go for the success that you had targeted originally. The performance on stage is quite different. We've all been to things, as I said before, that we haven't enjoyed, and perhaps it didn't chime with us. Fine. But you do have to find somewhere in you meets the need of the brief and delivers it for the people in front of you. And that's okay. Politicians perform all the time, badly or well, but they still have to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting, actually, because I remember, like, a good few years ago, it must have been in the first year or two of my business, I did a kind of a style workshop at a private members club, and I can't remember how many people it was, probably about, I want to say 30 or 40, something like that. And I remember somebody that I knew, fairly well, she was in the audience, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, "That was so brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. You spoke so well and it was really good." But she was like, "What I actually really loved was that you could tell that you did have a bit of nerves, but it was actually really, what's the word? It really helped me to sort of connect with you, because it was so human and it just made you real and relatable." And she was like, "Don't ever lose that about yourself, because when somebody's kind of too polished and too perfect and put together, it's quite hard to relate to them." And I thought that was really interesting, because I am much more naturally introverted. So for me, standing on a stage is always going to be something that, brings a bit of anxiety and, makes me feel nervous, and it's totally out of my comfort zone. And obviously the more you do it, as you said, you kind of it's like building a muscle, and you become, more skilled, but you also just become more used to it over time. But I think that has always stuck with me as like something kind of positive to remember, that I don't have to.
So a really good example of that is, we've all received nasty emails from people who haven't meant to be nasty, but have been very short with us and haven't even said best wishes, or they said suddenly kind regards, and you're thinking, or regards, and you think, gosh, that's a bit harsh, what's going on? Or, emails that have no punctuation, and it just kind of leaves you feeling that something bad has happened. But then now you can receive an email written by AI, even if it's just simply a sentence, and it's so polished, you think, what this is so odd. And the
Yeah.
emotion that you read in the other one, which was rude, and you thought, right, that's, I'm never working with this person again, funnily enough, is so much more reassuring, because you think, oh, somebody actually wrote that and hates me. This time, I'm not quite sure what's actually happened. So yes, interestingly, when you add a bit of yourself in there, plus, by the way, it's really not that, I wouldn't say normal, it's not that common to love to be on a stage.
No.
It's just not that common. It's simply, I mean, I saw how many times people have stepped out. Taylor Swift a couple of years ago. I didn't watch it, but I didn't go. But the Wembley Stadium, there's just so many people around her.
Yeah.
And just because it's one person. And the weight of that, I know she's earning a lot of money through it, but the weight of it is still quite major, because, one
huge.
little wrong string and the whole thing. But, there's a bit of a build up to that. There's a whole day of it. You don't go from zero to hero like that. You do build the muscle over time. And she probably, as so many performers of her ilk have always said, that they feel most at home on stage. So, and she has not gone from child prodigy to that. She has had so many stage performances before that. So it is a muscle, and everyone's still working on it all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something else that I love that you said as well. There's that you can be more of a timid person in certain situations.
God,
and
yes.
I love that you said that, because I think so many women listening will be able to resonate with it, and me included, obviously, from what I've just said. But despite that, you're presenting keynotes globally, like you're working with incredibly senior people, and you're in, a demanding position. And so I don't think the answer is to overcome like the timidness or the, whatever we want to call it. I think there's something really important about, as we were just saying, not trying to perform a version of confidence that isn't yours. And it's about finding your own way to show up, which looks different for everyone. Is that something that you have had to actively figure out or work on, or how do you deal with that on a kind of day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, I am very much naturally a shy person, and anyone listening or watching this who knows me, very much knows me, knows that I'm the person who's probably, if I had a pound for every time someone had said, has the cat got your tongue? All throughout my childhood, I'd be in LA right now, doing something different anyway, but I am very shy naturally. And in fact, I'd say, me, the person, I'm much better in smaller groups, whether that's socially or making my case in work, and then I am in big groups. Now, I don't mean on a stage with a big group in front of me. I'm happy with that, but it's more sort of having to fight to raise your voice enough so people hear you, or to be the cooler person saying, we've all been in those sort of teenage situations. But the shyness, my timidity has never gone away. Is 100%. If I have something to ask for on a plane, or if something's not quite right with something I've ordered in a restaurant, unless it's catastrophically there's a cigarette butt in my food or something, I won't say anything. I'd rather just not make a fuss. I'm not that person. Absolutely, I'd rather die. I'd rather just no way. Or if someone at my table says, we've got to move because the draft is just far too strong, I think, oh my God, suddenly you become 13 and embarrassed as hell. That will never go away. And I like that because it keeps me in check. I think a lot of people worry about, I'm shy, I can't do this, I don't do that. Fine. Well, we've talked about the muscle, number one, so that's okay. The second thing is the person in your head is telling you can't do something. Okay, fine. I understand that. I have that all the time too. But let me tell you something to reframe it slightly, which is that if you have a little voice telling you can't do that, well, you know what? I would thank that little voice, because that voice is stopping you from being a very arrogant person who thinks that you can, and probably ending up, well, like Narcissus inside the pond, or with egg on your face. It keeps you in check. It's your parameter. It's sort of, what, Priscilla, you've done really well to get to this point. It's going to be okay. We've done this before. Your palms are a bit sweaty. But look, you remember that feeling at the end. It's going to be, you're going to have that feeling however it goes. So just get there. And then once you start, you start. It's not as easy for everyone, I understand that. But when I can't be timid because the situation doesn't allow for it, I am not timid. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, I remain it. It's a bit like dyeing your hair. Your natural
Yeah.
colour will always come out. If you want to be blonde, fine. But if you're a natural brunette, it's going to be always that way. And I am also like that. I think there is pressure to become and to perform, but I think performance is excellent if you become, the best version of yourself for whatever you're trying to achieve. Now, that might not be in work, but I can only talk about work.
Yeah.
Far be it from me to talk about domestic issues or social, but in work, if you want things to improve slightly, well, guess what? Maybe you need to find a little bit of inner confidence in order to find that microphone to say, hello, I've got an opinion too. And that's quite gutsy. And you might not be that person and you might go ruby red. But then afterwards, you've done it. And as I said, that feeling of euphoria or relief or release comes every time. And remember that voice telling you you're rubbish. Yeah, obviously we don't want to listen to it 100% because it's silly and it's just been invented in your head. But guess what? If you had a voice in your head saying you are I just can't believe, someone hasn't discovered me because I am the best. Who are these people? Get out of my way. No one's going to like you. No one's going to listen. No one's going to watch you. So make friends with that panic button in your head,
I think also it can be a driver as well if you use it in the right way. Like I was having a conversation with my daughter yesterday about me and my husband have both shared stories with her about when we were growing up and we were told that we couldn't be something or we couldn't do something, and that we used that as fuel to prove people wrong. And I was saying to her yesterday, like, if anyone ever says that to you, then, and it's something that you really want to do, then just all you have to say is watch me, like I can, and then go and prove somebody wrong. Because if it's something that you really want to do and you fit and it brings you joy and you feel really strongly about it, then go and do it. Like I always use the example of my dad as well, because when I applied to go to London College of Fashion, he came to the interview day with me and, to see what it was all about and the kind of open day. And when I went for the interview, part of it was like a group exercise where it was, fairly competitive and you had to sort of have your voice and make sure that you were heard within this group setting. And he was like, I don't mean to put a downer on it, but that's probably not going to play to your strengths, is it? You're quite shy, and it's just, don't be disheartened if you don't get in, because it's very competitive, and you saw how many people there were there and how many spaces there are. So I just want to manage your expectations that this probably isn't going to work out for you, or something along those lines. And I genuinely don't know whether he was doing it as what's the word,
motivation.
Yeah. Or because he knew that that would just be kind of rocket fuel to me, that I would be like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. But I mean, that's certainly how I took it anyway.
You did.
I think he knows what a stubborn daughter he has. And that's exactly how I used it. And I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove you wrong. And I did, got a place at London College of Fashion after that. But I think that's the thing that we sometimes underestimate, that actually things that we might see as our flaws or things that we don't like about ourselves, we can we don't want to, as you said, we don't want to change ourselves, but we can overcome how we feel about things and we can use them as fuel to our fire. And I think that's why it's so important to have a bigger mission and to have a purpose and something that's driving you, that's bigger than I feel too shy to do this, or I don't feel qualified enough to do this, or all of us have those little voices that sit in the back of our minds.
They're good. But you just have to also remember that if you choose not to do something out of fear, which we all have done as well, if you don't want to go on that bungee jump and the rest of your group goes, you will feel regretful at the end of that you didn't. Mostly. And also, if it's about speaking up work-wise, remember that everybody who doesn't hear what you've got to say misses out on it. So you haven't, no one hears it, no one gains from it.
So true.
It's another way to think about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really powerful. And when it comes to your own style, do you use that to elevate your confidence? Like if you are feeling, I don't know, a bit more nervous or a bit unsure about going into a certain situation, like how do you feel about getting dressed, particularly for those kind of high stakes moments?
I was brought up by somebody who said to me, dress how you want to be treated. And I have
Love that.
always had that in my mind. I know that there are various versions of that all sort of mean the same thing. I suppose I will go with something that makes me feel, or has repeatedly made me feel super duper. I will never try something new, because from new, I don't extract any knowing confidence. I will find it in, the earrings I love, or the thing that I turn to. And the thing which is fresh and new for me is the mindset. So as long as I'm wearing not the old, but something that reminds me of other things that have gone well, but that my mind is sharp, fresh, ready. Yeah, that's where I find it. But you won't find me in anything less than I'm ready for something already. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't have a dress down look, as it were. I'm ready for that spontaneous chat. I don't know, not necessarily, but I will turn to something that has seen me through some other tricky moments.
I think that's really powerful as well, because I think that's a huge mistake that I see speakers make, or people who are needing to perform, is that they leave what they're wearing or their outfit or whatever until the last minute, because they're so focused obviously on the delivery and what they're communicating, which is absolutely right. But then they might buy something at the last minute and they haven't worn it before. They might have tried it on once and then they just don't feel
like them.
Yeah. And then it's like you're adjusting yourself, or you just don't show up with the same kind of conviction and confidence. And it's such a shame, because it kind of lets down all of the preparation that you've done on the communication and on your presence and everything else. Because it's just, been deprioritized. And I think the more that we can have that confidence in our style and that understanding of what, like you said, those little things that light us up and that give us that confidence, or give us that, I don't know, sentimental feeling. It all just adds towards feeling more confident when you're stepping onto that stage or when you're stepping into that room.
Yeah, which is why I think a lot of people have always turned to colours like black, because they can fade into the background, but you can dress them up and differently, because whatever you add to it can make it a completely different. But that's sometimes sort of as you will know in the style world, is sort of slightly a boring canvas. It's not always the most exciting, but I think that's why people do that, and that's great. That's great.
Because I think it feels safe, but I think there's so many different things, like you said, that you can do with it, and especially texture and jewelry and accessories and things like that. So it's a great starting point. I think the only problem is if you're, doing something like TEDx or something where it's completely black background, and then you're kind of like, you can end up disappearing into the background as well.
Yeah.
So I think
I would prescribe some red shoes.
Yes, definitely.
Or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's why you have got to be aware of like your environment and what you're going into. It's all part of the preparation. So the women and men that you work with, what do you think that they are experiencing when they feel like they've got it right? Is it that preparation and that they've really worked on their messaging and the way that they're showing up? Is it that they're being authentic and true to themselves? Is it like a bit of a mixture of all of those things?
Yes, I think the authenticity thing is quite tricky, because, as I said before, you can easily slip into a performing streak which travels away from you being in any way authentic, especially if you are putting out content far more than you'd be having normal conversations day to day. However, I do feel that it's a difficult one, this authenticity situation, because it is inauthentic to be, pretty much primed and ready to go all the time. But, I just feel to do your best, it's a bit like an exam. Okay, we've all been in positions, I keep saying that because we're all of an age where we've been through lots of different experiences, which should by this point show us that if we're nervous, if we're holding back, perhaps we should revisit those moments. So let's think about an exam. We've all been in positions where we've really had to study hard for them. And we know that if we've given up an entire summer or a heat wave in April for study leave to do that studying, it does work out. If you work hard, unless you're stopping yourself from sleeping and not eating and bad things like that. But, the harder you work for an exam, the less rubbish you'll feel when you turn that paper over. I know it's also digital now, but metaphorically anyway, and think, you know what? Out of 10 things, if 8 things come up, I'll be all right. But if you only know one, you've only prepared for one, you're probably going to be in trouble. So where my clients might feel better is just being super prepared in what it is they want to succeed in those moments that they have previously failed in. So yes, being authentic is absolutely important because there is a lot of, falsity on social media, and I'm pretending to be your best friend so you can buy my X, Y, and Z. But, and I don't like that at all, and you can become quite dependent on that. And what I hate about that is that those people are dependent only on one kind of an audience and they've forgotten about all the others. But you do have to be slightly inauthentic in the sense that you need to be, a bit like an athlete preparing for a marathon, which was here in London yesterday, or the Olympics. After after that very sluggish process of having to eat no sugar, high processed food, everything, sleeping well, never eating anything other than that strict diet. Guess what they do, the next day, the week after, if they haven't got another, they relax and they enjoy themselves, they eat, or they go to McDonald's and have a real high, and then the next day the diet begins. I don't know. But the truth is, if you want to succeed at something, be really good at it. Make sure you're using that muscle and training it. And then when you get into that situation, like when you turn the paper over, when you get into that position, if you get 8 scenarios out of 10, you're probably going to be all right. You've seen it before. It's like if you can take as many driving lessons as you can before that test, you will have been in more positions where you didn't know what the hell to do next than if you had only taken 7 or 8, which is why they make you take quite a few. So being authentic, difficult one. Yes, of course, please be authentic, be yourself, but be the best version of yourself. Be the one that's ready for an exam. Before any of us took what were then, the GCSEs we took, the moments we were walking into those exams, of course we were nervous and probably thought, I hate maths and never want to see it again. However, we were probably more maths filled in that moment than we have ever been, unless you took the A level. And, that is a real, you've really drunk it in, and you're going to probably try and do the best you can in that next 2 hours. And that is what I feel, my clients certainly get out of me. I haven't been so confident in X. I'm coming to you to fix it, and we can do Y and Z together. And, I think in anything, if you want to improve, you've just got to keep trying. Cooking as well. Or anything, whatever it is that you are interested in. It's the same rule every single time, but I think in business, sometimes people feel that they can really ad lib and just go for it. And there are a lot of people who are successful in it and then create social media followings out of being an ad libber who gets it wrong. Okay. But don't look at that and think, well, I could do it then. Well, yes, but is that what, that's that person's aim, target, and passion. What's yours? Think about it before you just choose a random strategy.
Yeah. I think also it, as you've just said, it depends on what kind of person you are as well, as to what your strategy is going to be and how much experience you've got in whatever it is that you're doing. Because I think for me, I have always been like over prepared. I'm very like conscientious. I'm a huge perfectionist, and that comes to my detriment certainly, as well as to being a positive. But I've learned actually in the last few years, because I've been doing this for such a long time, and I've been in this industry for over 20 years, that if I try and over prepare for something that I'm doing, whether it's a workshop or I'm speaking on stage or whatever it is, it actually doesn't work out as well for me as if I just do a sort of gentle preparation of knowing what I'm going to say and having my key pieces pulled together. Works for me a lot better, and doing it closer to when the event or whatever it is happening that actually works better for me now than how I used to be, which is like, you know, over preparing, doing too much, doing, you know, obsessive about it, like really focused on it. And I recognize in myself I don't need that anymore, but also I just seem to sort of perform better, not under pressure, but just being, you know, closer to the time frame. So I think knowing yourself is really important in understanding how you're going to best perform and what works.
I bet you're in that position though, because when you might be going on stage in a few hours and think, God, I literally haven't done enough prep for this. This is really irresponsible of myself. Alex, what have you done? But then, do you know, I probably, if you were my client, I'd probably say the thing is, I think you're suffering from having too much to say. And so in your mind, if you try to organize it, oh my God, you don't want to go there because you think, am I going to forget something? Which way do I do it? So in a way, it's almost a sign of confidence, of a level achieved that you have done on your own. So well done. But
thank you.
It's usually that, you know, that you could do this 100 times standing on your head, possibly drunk, in a different state, and you'd still have more to say about 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
I bet.
So I wanted to finish by touching on stage ready style, because we're obviously both very excited about it. So for anybody that doesn't know, stage ready style is happening on the 17th of June in London at Citizen and Tower Bridge, which is very exciting. And we're going to be looking at 3 different parts of your presence and your personal brand. So looking at identity, style, and communication, which I think aren't always looked at as 3 significant parts of your personal brand together in one day. So I would love for you to share with people like why you said yes to be part of this, and you know what you're bringing to the day, because I think it's a really powerful combination of the 2 of us together, which is genuinely different to anything else.
Well, I don't know how you will be delivering both of your brilliant sessions on the day, so I can't put words in your mouth. But for me, one of the things I know I'm going to do is to actually ascertain from the audience that we'll have as to what it is they would like to have answered in terms of how to have more presence. How do you command attention? How do you hold attention? How do you win it? How do you start conversations? And how do you keep them going? But I'm going to ask them in a certain way to tell me what it is, where their potholes are, because there is nothing worse than somebody lecturing, especially when it's about confidence on stage, and then I'm on stage and they'll be thinking, oh, well, it's easy for you because you can. So it's not easy for me. I have learned how to do it, also because it's my job, so I have to do it. But that is very much where I will be starting. It will be, I know that when you have to perform, whether that's on a stage, on a podcast, I mean, in any scenario, even one outside of work, you will feel your throat go dry. You will think, why didn't I wear those shoes? You will think, my tummy looks big in this and I don't know what to say. My throat is so dry, I now cannot, or I have taken a whole glug of water and I'm now coughing and spluttering on stage. Oh my gosh, it's a total disaster. Or they might just be thinking, I'm really, really good, but I wish I was better because my boss wants me to be, or whatever. And either way, these are voices in our head telling us that we're not as good as the bar that we crazily set ourselves. But also that, I'm really there to remind people as well that however they feel that they are performing, or I will not talk about the style because that is simply your domain. But, the way that they feel they're performing in any sort of performance, or I keep saying performance, but it's also how they deliver some information or how they feel they are trying to command attention. They will always feel perhaps it's not good enough.
Yeah.
My question is, well, I work very much in perception. What perception are you giving out? If you feel nervous yourself about something, other people will feel that that's rather contagious and they'll take it on. If you exude complete confidence, which almost nobody has in the entire world, apart from a peacock, perhaps, then people will think, gosh, how arrogant, but I quite like this little show going on. So we need to find somewhere in the middle. And perception is important. How you perceive yourself is not how others perceive you. And if you're nervous about the way you look, improve what you've got to say, because that will impress the audience more. It is not about perfection in your speech. As you said before, you gave a really human delivery. It is not about turning up you could turn up head to toe in Gucci and people think it's from Primark. So is that important? But it's how you wear it and how you speak it. So you can have an opinion that is political, which a lot of people don't agree with, or you've got a 50-50 split, like a Brexit situation. How you deliver what you believe and what you think is actually what wins people over, not to change their vote, but wins them over in terms of how they see you, perception.
Yeah.
They might never vote the way that you wish for them to do so, but it's about delivery. And it's not about convincing. It's about making sure that you have done your bit and felt that, you know what, I've done 100%, that that's all I had in the tank, and I think I've left quite a lot of attention in the room. And that is the impression, as we said before. What is it that you think about before you go into something? What impression would I like to leave in the room? So I'm, my field is comms, PR, impressions. So if somebody leaves a room and you've said something, introduced something, what are they going to remember from what you said? And that is how I like to walk into a room when, like this one. What do I want all of these women to go away with? I want them to not think, well, Priscilla told us how she does it. I want them to think, well, okay, so I heard what it is I could be doing, and I'm going to apply number 2 and number 4, and I'll see about number 6. We're going to be playing with some Lego, but certainly very much answering people's deep panics, and it will be Chatham House rules, so it won't leave the room.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's going to be a big part of how we're starting the first session on identity as well. As you said, I think we so often don't see ourselves for how brilliant we are. And, we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially as women. And I think that is an important part of how we're kicking off the day on identity, as well as thinking about how do other people see us and what would other people say, when they receive us in a room, and also looking personally at, past, present, future. Who have we been? Who are we now? And who do we want to be? And there'll be little pieces of each of those that we want to bring forward or that we want to leave behind. And I think it's so important to stop and take a minute and actually invest that time into yourself, because we're so busy running at 100 miles an hour all the time that we don't actually consider any of those things. We're just so in our heads. So actually gifting yourself that day to really think about it is as much what it's about as, me sharing tips on color and style and presence and all that kind of stuff. It's much more about...
It's an investment, for sure.
Definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much. And I wanted to finish, before we do some quickfire questions, with what's the one thing that you wish more women would give themselves permission to do before they're going into a room or speaking up or having one of those moments?
I have lots of things, but I'll stick with one because you've asked me just for one. And this might not apply to everybody, but it is the one I've seen over and over again. And it is to be, I'm not going to say confident because that's such an overused word, but I want you to be a little bit more boastful. I want you to realize that you are better than the little voice is telling you, or how the last one went. I want people to learn how to professionally boast. I don't know what boasting looks like in their outside world, and we're all taught never to do that and to gloat and be, rude. But when it comes to boast inside. Tell yourself you're better than the last time. I want them to, I can't think of a better word than boast. I want them to really think that they are the bee's knees. Because the thing is, if you don't do that, no one will do that.
No.
People, once you come out of childhood and you might have had somebody always telling you you're so excellent at this, or you're so pretty, or I love your hair. As you grow up, that sort of stops happening, which is probably the right thing to do. And that's always generally encouragement. But, so therefore you hear very little of, you're actually a really fantastic cyclist or whatever. Do you know what? You've got to start doing it for yourself, because if you don't say, do you know what? That went well. Maybe I am pretty good at this. It's okay. You must do that. Be a bit more boastful about how well you do in your field. And maybe the boasting, if you haven't had much success yet because you are in a startup or whatever, is set those bars high and be boastful about how you will achieve them, like you said before, with your college of fashion, I will get there. Why shouldn't I get there? Of course I can. And if I don't get there, well, it's the universe's fault. But but I'm going to get there. So be a bit more boastful. There's only one of you.
I love that.
You could have the best idea in the room, or the best thing, the best product, best momentum, best brain. But if you don't tell someone about it, how are they going to find out?
That's such good advice. And I think especially when you have your own business, if you don't have a, big team around you or that kind of thing, then you don't have anyone to tell you that. So it's even more important, especially if you're a solopreneur, there is no one else that's gonna tell you that. So you've got to pat yourself on the back.
That is right. That is right.
So I'm going to finish with we always have the same quick fire questions about your wardrobe, just for a little bit of fun. So I'd love you to tell us, what is the one item of clothing in your wardrobe that you love the most and why?
Is it really corny to say my wedding dress?
I love that. No, it's not at all.
My wedding dress, because it is phenomenal. And I can't wear it really, because I'm not going to be married again, I hope, or anyway in it. It is by Philippa Leppley, and you have to get quite close to it to see how wonderful it is. It is certainly white. But I'm not actually wearing any today, but I'm pretty into polka dots. And on this dress are extremely pale pink, so almost undetectable to the eye unless you're really close. There are hand embroidered. Wow. So imagine if you put your hand over, you can feel all these sort of little bumps. Hand embroidered, what would be the word? Not polka dots, but little dots all the way over the dress.
Beautiful.
And there were a lot of people on the day who were stroking me. It's such a nice feeling. I was thinking, get off. And it is of the most exquisite beauty. And I just wish I could wear it again and not look like I was really odd wearing something really quite fantastic on a normal Monday. It made me feel $1 million, and it was almost worth $1 million. I'm joking. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Sensational. Also because I never wear it, so that's why it's got elevated status.
I feel like you should get it reworked into like an incredible dress that you can wear, not all the time, but something that you can wear.
Maybe. Yes. But then it's always like you don't want to touch it. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, I can understand that. And if we opened your wardrobe right now, what would we find way too much of?
Shoulder padded, tailored blazers, like I'm wearing now. If you're not watching this, I am wearing one. It's a tuxedo one. I wear a lot of blazers, maybe because I'm Italian and it's just what you do. In Italian, there is not a proverb, but a saying that is, without bread, the plate is empty, which is probably their way of always getting carbs into a meal. In the fashion world, not a woman, but I think just somebody is naked without a tailored blazer. It doesn't sound quite so clunky. And so probably that has something to do with it. So yeah, lots of them. I have them in every colour, this is a velvet one. There's tweed, there's obviously lots of linen for the summer. And I never feel right without earrings and a blazer. So
I love that. It's like feeling polished and put together.
It's polished. Yeah, it's polished. You can feel rubbish. But then once you've got some earrings and a blazer on.
Yeah, it does.
I can go to the White House.
Yeah, it changes everything. It really does. And finally, what's an outfit or a trend that you look back and think, I really regret that, and why?
Oh, I don't know if I really regret anything. I know, it's that terrible. Has anyone ever said that on your podcast? They don't regret
anything? They don't. Yeah, I think Saskia said that last week, actually. Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. I haven't had any fashion fails yet.
You're very elegant and considered.
Just stick with what works, and I mean, I don't really wear jeans anymore. I don't know, I never reach for them, but this whole, whenever I see an argument between, is it barrel or, let's bury the skinny. Yeah. I just think, well, I mean, I've got tons of skinnies, but I just don't wear jeans anymore. But just if the skinny makes you feel good and they look brilliant and they make your legs look like you're a giraffe, go for it. I mean, why are you? So anyway, I just stick with what has always worked.
Yeah.
No, not yet. Soon, possibly, but not yet.
I love that. That probably speaks to the nature of your kind of style personality, perhaps being more classic and elegant.
Maybe, or a bit boring. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah.
And where can people find you if they want to connect?
They can find me in London I can meet in person for meetings. Otherwise, I am on toptrick.co.uk, which I'm sure will be underneath this. You can book a 15, 20, 30-minute discovery call if you have a problem and you want to discuss an upcoming, perhaps, talk or speech you've got to write or give. Or simply the comms in your business if things are plateauing or not taking off generally. I'm always around to give strategy advice. I am on Instagram, Priscilla Comms, and Priscilla Pollara on LinkedIn, but you might not find me communicating an enormous amount on there. Back to the authentic stuff. Simply because I'm around and I will always answer, but I'm not always producing content, but that doesn't mean I'm not at home. So do get in touch if you need anything. And
Amazing.
Obviously at our event in June.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much helpful advice. I know that this will resonate with a lot of women.
Alex, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to A Styled Life. If today's episode resonated, the best way to support the show is to share it with another trailblazer or leave a quick review. And if you're ready to align your style with your next level of impact, head to the show notes to book your free style strategy call, because when your style aligns with your purpose, the world takes notice.